There's one little secret that you need to know, and this is an insider view. The most important information is actually hidden in that approaches to learning section. Hello and welcome back to Talking Teens Official. I'm Nural and thank you for joining me again and for your listening ears. I really appreciate it. This is our Season 2 finale. I'm going to wrap up Season 2 with this episode here. And we're going to be tackling something very fitting, that is the end of the semester moment or the end of year moment, the report card. So I want to start by telling you a little bit of a story. And I'm thinking of a student I had a few years ago. Let's call him Leo. Leo was completely disengaged in my class. He wasn't disruptive though, but he was pretty much just a ghost or an entity in the room. He was completely flying under the radar. That's what we call it in our teacher terms. He was rarely handing in any work and barely passing his tests. He was practically in the room, staring out the window, scribbling some things down on a bit of paper. On paper, his report card was a C of not submitted or low grades. Well, I should say and low grades. When I asked him what's going on, and after a few conversations, we kind of got to the bottom of it. He felt he'd been let down by his teacher from the previous year. And I've talked about this before in another episode. This is what we call an educational echo. So he just decided he was pretty bad at the subject, pretty bad at maths. He'd thrown his hands up in the air and he's just gone, I give up. It's an act of helpless defeat. So I put the onus back on him and I told him that I actually believed that he was capable of getting way better results than what he was doing. But he had to take control of it. He was in the driver's seat. It was his learning, not mine. I often say to the kids, you know what? I already know this stuff. That's not why I'm here. I'm actually here to help you understand this stuff a little bit at least. So I coached this kid a little bit in class and I coached him to take control of his own learning, which is what we actually want all our students to do. And he did. For the entire second half of the topic, he actually was working a little bit harder. Still wasn't perfect, but this wasn't every lesson. And there still needed to be reminders along the way. But when he was switched on, focused and locked in, he would work his little tail off, at least for that one lesson anyway. He became better at finding me outside of class and stayed back sometimes and asked a couple more questions, but he came better at finding me to get help on something that he wasn't quite sure with that we'd done in the previous lesson. He redid some practice questions. You know, I asked for maybe can you just do like a couple a night rather than sitting down and feeling like you have to sit down for 2 hours because no one's going to do that. He started asking more questions in class, which was the important thing. And for the first time on the topic, he was actually trying. The growth in his confidence and understanding was actually quite monumental. And this is, again, these are the light bulb moments that teachers talk about. That is why we're in the classroom. That is why we do what we do. But then the end of topic test came, which is what the report card grade is based on. So you see that grade. And because his earlier results earlier in the year were actually really on the low end, all that incredible effort and all that growth resulted in a C for the unit, for the topic that we were working on in maths. That one letter that you see on the piece of paper or on the report card completely erases the whole story. You look at that and you go, that's a C. And he might look at that and go, that's not bad for what I've got. But you might still be thinking, but it's only a C. It didn't show the courage it took for him to keep on trying and to try again. It didn't show the extra effort he put in. It didn't show him transforming from a ghost in the room, if you like, to being an active learner. All it showed was a mediocre grade, and that is the single biggest thing a report card fails to capture. It fails to capture that journey and growth over the learning. So that story really gets to the heart of what's missing from the report cards that you receive as a parent. But to really understand what's missing, we first need to break down what a report card actually is and what it offers, what its official purpose is supposed to be. So according to the Department of Education, and I've just gone online here and just wanted to get the wording right from the Department of Education, a student report is designed to do one main thing, which is to inform parents about their child's progress at school. It's an official communication channel that shows how your child is performing against the set curriculum. Schools are required to send them out at least twice a year, and you can typically expect to see them at the end of term 2 and at the end of term 4, so halfway and then at the end. But when you as a parent are reading it, what are you actually seeing? The first thing to understand is that those carefully worded comments need to be just that from teachers. Carefully worded. The days of teachers writing personal comments about a student's personality are largely gone. We can now only write comments on what a child has or hasn't done, what they have achieved, and any specific strategies on how they can improve. All of those personal observations that are now covered in the generic tick boxes, and you'll see them labelled as approaches to learning or something like that. So what you are reading is a very clinical, evidence-based summary of academic performance. It's not a holistic view of your child as a person. And that brings me back to the main idea that the final grade doesn't tell the whole story. I want to share something that I do that the report card will never show you. Quite often, if a student is borderline, say they're sitting at about 69%, which might be the difference between a C and a C+. Do you know what I do? Depending on how they've worked, I'll just bump them up to a higher grade. I always tell the student that I'm doing it and why I'm doing it. And quite often I'll say, you have worked so hard on this and your effort deserves to be recognised. I'm giving you that C+. Just because you came in just under, I actually think you were working at the level above. So I'm going to put that on your report. And quite often I'll do that the same thing at the higher end of the spectrum. If a great student gets 94%, for example, and the boundary for an A+ is 95, I'll often give them that A+. The final grade you see on the report card isn't always a cold, hard calculation. Sometimes it's a reflection of a teacher's professional judgment. It's a human decision to reward significant effort and significant growth that the raw data alone would have missed. The report card doesn't show you the teacher's hand. And for the student, it does so much more when we bump those grades up a little bit. It helps to build our relationship and it boosts their confidence and it rewards them for working hard, making them feel truly seen. All right, so what do you do when that report card arrives as a parent in your inbox? Here's a simple 3-step guide to how to talk to your kid actually about the reports. So step 1, what I actually want you to do is I actually want you to read it by yourself first. Like, don't even tell them you saw it. And before you sit down with your kid, with your teenager, I want you to read the report by yourself. And the purpose of this is to process your own emotional reaction, because quite often, if you're doing it in front of them, you will exacerbate your reaction. So be it disappointment, be it pride, or be it anger, it doesn't matter. Whatever your first reaction is going to be written all over your face. So this ensures that when you do talk to your kid about their report, you're coming from a place of calm, curiosity, and not with raw emotion. So read it alone first, especially as they get older. Step 2, I want you to focus on their efforts, not their grades. When you start the conversation, I don't want you to immediately jump to the A's or the D's or the E's. I want you to start by highlighting a positive comment from a teacher about their work or a tick in the approaches to learning section. Something like, hey, I was impressed that your maths teacher or your science teacher or your art teacher said how hard you've been working. Spot on. Keep up the good work. That's all you need to say. This starts the conversation with a connection and it's not a judgment. All right, but what happens if you do need to make that judgment? All right, so what you need to do, and this is step 3, I want you to ask curious questions. I don't want you to ask accusatory ones. So instead of asking, why did you get a C in maths? Which immediately puts them on the defensive, ask a curious, open-ended question like, the report's saying that it looks like you found algebra hard. What did that look like in the classroom? Did you ask for help or, what was going on there? This invites a conversation about their experience, not just a defense of their grade, because quite often they get defensive. So now that we know how to have a constructive conversation about the report, can I please add a slight teacher little niggle here? We know that many parents actually don't read the reports, but these documents actually inform you about your child. So you really need to be in the habit of reading them. And the other thing is, we actually spend hours writing these reports. It's a huge deal for us, and they're always coming at us to check and keep up to date with our reports. So please show us as teachers the professional courtesy and value the work of not only your child by reading their report, but of the teachers too. And one final really important tip, those parent-teacher interviews that often come out after the reports, they shouldn't be optional in your mind. Use them to check in, because often what we can't say on a carefully worded report, we can and we will say to you in person when you're sitting in front of us. But there's one final little secret that you need to know, and this is an insider view on how to read a report card like a teacher. So we all get drawn when you first open the report card. Your eyes will naturally gravitate towards the letter grades, the A's, the B's, the C's, or where that dot was 6 months ago and where it's gone now. But often, the most important information is actually hidden in that approaches to learning section, which I was talking about. Those little tick boxes for things like persistence, organisation, respectful relationships, things like that, they aren't just a filler. A student who gets a C but has a consistently or always ticked next to shows persistence or any of those approaches to learning, if they're consistently trying in those tick boxes, is a student who has the grit to succeed. They're the ones who are really trying hard and pushing forward. So you need to check those boxes if you want a snapshot of what your kid's teacher is actually seeing in the classroom. Those tick boxes are basically our voice for their whole approach to their learning. So please pay attention to those ones. All right, the report cards arrives and it's a document filled with grades and comments. But as we've explored, it's just a snapshot. It's not the full story of your child's journey. It doesn't show their effort, their growth, or, really importantly, the human decisions that go into every grade. The biggest takeaway from this season finale is to shift how I want you to view those reports. Instead of seeing it as a final judgment of where your kid is at, you need to see the reports as a conversation starter and an opener. It's a door that we've just opened for you. It's about reading it with curiosity and celebrating the effort behind the grades, and then use it as a tool to open up a conversation and have a deeper dialogue with your kid and their teachers. By doing this, you actually turn a moment of potential anxiety, because the kids can get really nervous before their reports come out, into a powerful opportunity for actually connecting with your child and all the teachers. And this whole conversation about the limits of a report card gets to the absolute heart of what Sir Ken Robinson was trying to tell us all those years ago about education. He often used the metaphor of agriculture versus industry, and he said that you can't manufacture a human being on a production line, which is what those reports are doing. Education is actually an organic process. It's like building a farm or like being a farmer. And your job is to create the conditions for that farm for your child to flourish. And the report card, it's the ultimate tool of the industrial factory model. It's a quality control check. It's stamping a grade on a product to see if it meets a uniform standard. So when you look at that report card, you need to remember its limitations. It's a mechanical snapshot of an organic human being, which is your child. Our job as parents isn't to be a factory foreman, obsessing over the metrics. It's to be gardeners focusing on the overall health and growth of that plant, which is your child. And that brings us to the end of not just this episode, but the end of our second season of Talking Teens Official. This was episode 20, and I've been releasing an episode every week. So that's 20 weeks worth of work sitting back there on YouTube and Spotify. Thank you for joining me on this journey through everything that we've covered in this season in particular. Everything from mental health and failure to the secret lives of teachers. It's been a real privilege to share these stories and these insights with you. If you've enjoyed this season and want to continue the conversation, please follow and subscribe on all my social media channels. And don't forget to jump into my school community. We're still having some really great conversations in there, and I'd love for you to come in and take part in that. And if you find real value in what we're doing here at Talking Teens Official, consider buying us a coffee. I'll put a QR code in the comments and in the show notes, and you can donate any amount you choose. It's not expected, but it's always appreciated. And on that note, as season 2 is wrapping up, I'm just going to tell you that I'm going to take a few weeks break before I publish for season 3. I have an older child who's going into the final stage of their exams, and I want to be able to be a little bit more present for as he navigates through that process. So I still will be posting stuff, but I'm not going to bring out any new material for at least a couple of weeks. So until then, remember that focus, connection over correction. Thank you for listening. I'm Nural, and this is Talking Teens Official.